Okay, this is chapter 32, section 3 on the Holocaust. So I'll probably fill out a few details a little bit more than the book because I want to talk about the Nazi New World Order, the rationale behind it. So let's get started. Um, Remember, Hitler's in charge. He becomes the Prime Minister of Germany in 1933. So by 1935, he enacts something called the Nuremberg Laws in 1935. And these are laws that took away the civil rights of the Jews. It limited what kind of jobs they could do, prohibited marriages, right, between Jews and non-Jews. And this is where they had to start wearing the infamous yellow star. So we've talked about Kristallnacht, right? So 3 years later, Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, so you can hear literally broken glass, as Jewish businesses were destroyed, synagogues burned. And so this is the first overt violence against the Jews. So it has begun. And Hitler begins to start talking about this Jewish problem, i.e., how to get rid of the Jews. What's the solution? And so after Kristallnacht and the Nuremberg laws, you see a lot of Jews here become refugees and they try to get out of Germany. Some Jews stay because they think, hey, I mean, we've seen this before. Europeans get like this. We can wait it out. I mean, we're in the most sophisticated country in the world. It's the 20th century. Um, I'm sure it'll be nothing. So the Jews that become refugees, they look to these countries, right? The Allied countries to find a new home. But do these countries welcome them? Nope. Nope. And nope. Right? Maybe they take a few, but not too many. So this is Hitler's rationale. Oh, even these guys won't take the Jews. So what's to stop me from coming up with worse methods, worse solutions? So by 1942, remember, Nazis control most of Europe. And he starts to think about his new order, this new way he wants to control things. And remember this idea of Lebensraum, this living space. That's what he's doing here as he conquers Europe, is he's creating this living space for this master race that he is creating. So the Germans invade the Soviet Union, right, in 1941, and this is his plan. And so what is this Nazi new order? They're going to rule Europe, right? The Slavic people, the Russians and Eastern Europeans will become the slaves, right? So they're going to exploit the resources that Europe has to offer. And he begins to enslave people to serve the master race. And of course, that means you must get rid of all the undesirables. So Jews, of course, are the number one target, but that's communists, gays, gypsies, or Roma is the politically correct term, people who have any sort of mental or physical disability. So it is pretty horrific. I mean, where does this guy come up with these things? And so I think a book I used to use called it Scientific Racism and Propaganda. So these are some examples of the propaganda, and these are his scientific racism. So he's saying this is what the master race looks like, the Aryans. Of course, you and I know not everyone in Germany looks like this, but he has this idea that by eliminating undesirables and breeding programs that he can create all these blonde, blue-eyed people. I mean, he goes so far as to talk about, this is from the Nuremberg laws. Those of you who know German can maybe decipher it. But he kind of goes through what makes a Jew, and if you have one grandparent. I mean, he takes a long time pondering this, and so he kind of plays on these racial stereotypes, ethnic stereotypes. But of course, none of this is actually true, right, or accurate. So again, how is he going to get rid of the Jews? And I mean, can you believe I'm actually saying this? He first comes up with this method called the Einstock-Gruppen, or death squads. And so they would go around and gather up people and just execute them. One of the more infamous ones and the largest one of these is Babi Yar, which is in Ukraine. And this was 1941. And yes, folks, those are bodies. So he says, oh, that's not very safe, or this is not very efficient. He also starts to round up Jews in what they call ghettos, right? This is what the Italians did way back in the 1500s. So Warsaw in Poland was probably the largest ghetto. Again, we'll talk more about life for the Jews here. Okay. Are you guys seeing those messages? Awkward. So now he comes up with something called the final solution, right, to the Jewish problem. And so this is 1941, right? He feels like he's the master of Europe, that he's going to achieve this goal. And there's something called the Wannsee Conference here in this fancy neighborhood, I believe outside of Berlin. And he and the top brass of the Nazi Party and the SS meet together and decide on how they're going to exterminate the Jews. They'll keep notes, careful notes of this, and these notes will be used at the Nuremberg trials, which are held after the war. And these are crimes, holding, Nazis on trial for crimes against humanity. So what is the final solution? That is where concentration camps, right, where Jews have been placed since the Nazis have started to occupy Europe, these will become extermination camps. This is when this idea of gassing the Jews, right, and then burning their bodies in crematoria. And so these are scenes from Auschwitz, the largest of the concentration camps. And I know you guys are reading Night by Wiesel, so you are probably familiar with what's going on. So this is where they arrive at the train station and they come in and the Germans separate them, and this is the canisters of Zyklon B, which is the gas that they'll use to kill the people and then send them to the ovens. So we'll talk obviously more about these things, and you're reading Night, but we'll talk more about some of this detail in class. But I wanted to take a moment and talk about people who put their lives on the line, average people, even royalty, who tried to do their part in stopping this genocide. So when the Nazis occupied Denmark and issued that all Jews in Denmark have to wear the yellow star, Christian X, the king of Denmark, he parades with a yellow star and commands all the Danes to wear yellow stars. Corrie ten Boom is a Dutch woman who she and her sister will hide Jews in their homes. They will be caught, and she and her sister will be sent to Auschwitz as well. And her sister will die there, and she will live to tell her story in a book called The Hiding Place. Check it out if you have time. And then Raoul Wallenberg is a Swedish diplomat who will use his neutral papers to issue documents to Jews stuck in occupied Europe and try to help them get out of Europe. So these are some, and there's millions, well, maybe not millions, too bad. There are hundreds of other people who are not named, right, that save their neighbors and their friends. And these, of course, are the evil men who planned this out. We all know Hitler, but these are some of the other baddies. Heinrich Himmler and Eichmann will carry out. These are SS guards, and we've got Goebbels and Heydrich. Anyway, I could go on. I'm sorry, this is Goering and this is Eichmann. Some of these men will be captured at the end of the war. I believe Goering and Goebbels will commit suicide. I think he might, his wife and all of his children, I think he kills them all before the, well, I'm sorry, I should have checked this before I start speaking, but he might have done that before they were captured, and then Goering and others were captured, and then some committed suicide in prison. Eichmann, I believe, is tracked down by the Israelis after the war, I think in the 60s, and he's found in Argentina. And they will bring him back to Israel, and he will stand trial for his crimes. So, this is an overview of the Holocaust and the rationale behind it. Again, we will talk more about the implications of these things in class.